Now on to Chapter 2 material. Let's take a look at the dietary guidelines. These are from the 2010 dietary guidelines and our recommendations for macronutrients. Remember, those are the nutrients we need in greatest quantities, are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Carbohydrates should be 45 to 65% of the diet, with fat 20 to 35%, and protein 10 to 35%. But remember that most Americans only need about 10 to 15% of their diet from protein. Now this is what it could look like, a representation of how all of these macronutrients will contribute to the total calories that you're eating. Especially if you had a lower carbohydrate intake at 45, remember it's 45 to 65, about 25% protein and 30% fat. This isn't necessarily what you should be taking, but it's just an example of what you could be taking in. Now, what about the micronutrient ranges, our vitamins and minerals? How are these established? Well, first, let's start with the recommended dietary allowance, the RDAs. These are based on solid research, and it's established by the Dietary Reference Intake Committee, the DRI committee. When there's not enough research and they're actually making more of an educated guess, this is called an adequate intakes or an AI. It doesn't mean that there's no research on there, it's just not the solid research that we can say that we're really sure about this value, so you can see those values change more often. Now again, what do most people believe is our view, kind of our safety view, is that we just have a safe and danger range when we're talking about micronutrients, but really there's a safety range and then there's a little bit marginal on both sides, but there's a danger of deficiency as well as toxicity. Okay, and then we'll review this again. You can see this is our, basically a plot of participants in a study, and this is how they establish the RDA by first establishing the average, or the EAR, the estimated average intake. And what I'm doing is I'm just plotting the numbers and showing that these represent individuals. This could be 100,000 people, and each of these actually is 10,000 people. And this group needs about 700 milligrams of calcium. I'm just making an example of calcium, whereas this might need 650, and this person may need, or this group of people may need 900. But when you plot the entire group, you're going to see that you'll actually make basically a whole range. And here what I'm outlining is just that this whole group of people needs about 700. But you'll always have a bell curve when you plot or you go through the distribution of this. Remember, there are always outliers. There are going to be people who need a lot less and people who need a lot more. So what we do is we first establish the average. This is the EAR, or estimated average requirement. And this is the average amount that is needed by the population. It's not necessarily where we want to put the recommended intake for the population. This is just going to be the average. And this, we're just establishing that through the research. And this is what the committee establishes. Now, I'm sorry this is moving around so much, but if we actually put the recommended intake there, we would miss out on this entire group of people, everyone to the right. So everyone who needs more than 800 milligrams a day wouldn't be getting enough. So we want to make this at 98%, and what that means is we're covering 98% of the population is going to be covered, and this is where the recommended dietary allowance is going to be placed. So almost everybody gets covered with this recommended intake. Now what you can't see in this is over on the side, if we went way to the right over here and we established it, and we tried to make it out like 1,400 milligrams of calcium to get everybody, what would happen? Well, maybe we'd get into some low ranges with to some upper intake levels with the individuals who needed about 500 milligrams a day. So that's why we don't just randomly take a value way out here to try to cover everybody. And that's why you just want to have the value set at 98% of the intake. And again, this is all based on, and I just took calcium as an example, on data of nutrient needs of the population. Okay, so food groups. It's important to know the different nutrients that you get from the different food groups, and this is why we want variety in our diet, so we can obtain all of the necessary nutrients. And look, you can see fruit and vegetables have very similar nutrients, vitamin A, C, potassium, and fiber. Vegetables also generally have folate and magnesium on top of that, depending on which vegetable it is. When you look at grains, it's a lot of B vitamins. You can also get some iron, magnesium, and fiber. There's also some protein in grains. We always think of meat, we think of protein and iron, right? Well, iron's usually mostly in beef, less so in chicken products. But they both very high in protein, but you also get the magnesium, zinc, even some potassium and B vitamins. Particularly vitamin B12 only occurs in animal products. You definitely need to know that. Legumes and nuts are similar to meat. You'll see both have protein and iron, also the magnesium, zinc, potassium, but they in addition have fiber and then also have thiamine, but no B12. B12 is only from animal products. Dairies are known for their riboflavin, a little bit of B12, particularly for calcium and phosphate. Also have a little bit of magnesium, potassium as well. And then oils. Oils, we really think of our essential fatty acids and then the vitamin E. So you can see it's a little bit of a variety, certain some overlap. I would make sure you know the key differences between the groups for the exam. So fruit is a plant which includes the seeds of that plant. And if we look here to a tomato, which we think of as a vegetable, it's actually a fruit, just like an avocado is a fruit. You see, here's the plant and it has seeds within it, so that's a fruit. A vegetable is the remaining portions of the plant. So it could be the roots, which would be a carrot, it could be the stems, it could be the leaves, which are leafy greens, or in this case, broccoli, the flower. So it's everything else, and it doesn't contain the seeds. Now, the USDA is going to divide fruits and vegetables into subgroups, and it's going to be based on their nutrients. And that's why it's important to eat a variety of colors and a variety of fruits and vegetables so you can obtain all the nutrients.